You're watching Pulse for the 31st of January, and it's time for some World of Warcraft news. In this week's episode, we're pretty much only looking at the now live, or for some going live soon, patch 4.3.2. The only other items on the menu, smalls and blue posts. Let's get to it. So we start in the news off with pretty much the only big piece of news this week. It has taken its sweet time, but patch 4.3.2 is finally live. Yes, it's hitting the servers this week. Most of you probably have a good idea of what's coming with this patch because I have been covering it for the past couple of weeks, but I will cover the notes again and I will tell you that this patch is a pretty interesting one, and I would say to some pretty controversial too. Some of the big features and changes coming to this patch are cross-realm raids for older content with real ID friends, a few item tweaks and new items, a few new achievements, a reduced game client install size, which to me is a welcome change. And it's also finally giving us on the live servers access to the 64-bit client. So this won't be directly included in the game client, it'll be available as a separate download after the release of the patch. So if you are running a 64-bit operating system and you have met the recommended requirements, then I'd say it's probably worth giving it a try. Along with all of this, the controversial part, the Dragon Soul difficulty changes that we covered last week. If you missed it last week, the power of the aspect spell reduces the health and damage dealt of all enemies in the raid by 5%, and this will grow progressively stronger over time to reduce the difficulty and make the encounters more accessible. That's pretty much all there is to say about it. Blizzard did, however, mention that they will be changing this when they see fit. It's not an automatic effect, it's not going to go up by 5% every week or anything like that, so we're going to just have to watch it and see for ourselves. If you want the specifics like the new items that were added, the new mounts, or anything else like that, MMO Champion and Wowhead have you covered, so you can check their posts about this patch in the links below this video. Now let's have a look at the actual patch notes. First up, in the general class changes, Vengeance is no longer triggered by receiving damage from other players. Then for Druids, the tier 13 balanced Druid 4-piece bonus now also increases the damage of Star Surge by 10%, in addition to its current effect. For the Hunters, Aspect of the Hawk now grants roughly 35% more attack power. I'm looking forward to that. Deterrence now also reduces damage taken by 30% while active. Black Arrow now ticks every 2 seconds for 20 seconds, as opposed to every 3 seconds for 15 seconds. The total damage dealt of the ability is unchanged. Lastly, Lock and Load no longer benefits Arcane Shot, nor is it consumed by Arcane Shot. For the mages, Fireball damage has been reduced by roughly 6%, Pyroblast's initial damage has been reduced by roughly 6%, and its damage over time is unchanged. Paladins will see Holy Radiance now cost 40% of their base mana, up from 35%. Priests' Mass Dispel should again prefer dispelling targets that have magical effects that can be dispelled. And lastly, for the rogues out there, Adrenaline Rush no longer triggers a global cooldown. Now, as I mentioned before in the Dungeons and Raids changes, we have the cross-realm raiding with real ID friends. It seems like several typo fixes and clarified descriptions have been added to the Dungeon Journal entries for Dragon Soul. Players can no longer win multiple copies of the same item on a single Raid Finder boss kill. After that, there were a couple of balance changes to both Dragon Soul and Baradin Hold, and then there's that ever-increasing buff that we spoke about earlier. There's not much going on in the item changes, but Vial of Shadow's damage, that's dealt by Lightning Strike, has been reduced to approximately 1/3 of its previous damage. However, it will now trigger approximately 3 times as often. That's pretty much it. I've linked the full patch notes below, so you can, if you're interested, have a look at them for yourselves. There are also, as always, a couple of extras and blue posts linked to all of this that you can have a look at below. These are all courtesy of both MMO Champion and Wowhead. I'm going to end this on a high note and say that, as Blizzard said before, this will be the last patch of Cataclysm before the pre-Mists of Pandaria world events start. So this patch is also marking the beginning of the end of this expansion. Quite exciting, and I absolutely can't wait for the Mists of Pandaria world events to start. With that done, let's move on to the World of Warcraft smalls. First up, over at the official site, you can have a look at a bunch of art gallery updates. There's also a new lore story to check out, this one featuring Lorthamar Theron. I hope I said that right. Then over at Wowhead, 50 Easy Elders. Get in the Lunar Festival pit. They have a new site feature up and running, the same model as Tab. Then there's an add-on review over at MMO Champion for Collectinator. Have a look at the latest MMO report and the latest WoW Insider weekly news update. That's for January the 27th. Read a couple of posts about the 2012 Dark Moon Fair in Los Angeles, and lastly, read some updates from the NAO Invitational. Now we're going to have a look at some of the recent Blue posts. So the Blues had a bit to say on bringing back Uldar. Apparently everyone loved it, even Ghostcrawler. They had a bit more to say on BlizzCon 2012's cancellation. Will Intellect Plate ever be useful? Some players suggested that Blizzard should allow players to turn off enchant effects, and Blizzard did reply saying that it's something they've been looking into. Then in our Mists of Pandaria Blues, read a little bit more about no filler content in Mists of Pandaria PvP, and the Mists of Pandaria expansion name, which I personally like quite a lot. Sadly, that's all I have for you in the World of Warcraft news this week. As always, you can find everything that I spoke about in this episode linked in the description below this video. Check back here soon for more. Like the video, favorite it, share it with your friends, and subscribe. Most importantly though, happy patch 4.3.2.